All right, this is Fishing Academy, and this is how to catch your own bait for fishing. Right, everybody, this is not going to be how to throw a bait net. There's plenty of videos out there on how to throw a bait net. This is more of an introduction of the right net to use and why and when and where. One of the things, if you go back in history, actually 301 AD, the Polynesians already had nets, and they used it not just to catch bait, but for food, to catch fish. So, I mean, cast nets go back thousands and thousands of years. In this area, and anywhere you're at, that there's a bait available in the flats or around range markers, you got to know the right net to use. And here's where it all comes in. Number one is to give you an idea about a net. When you're talking about a net, if a net is 6 foot tall, you're going to have a 12-foot diameter. Now, the average net that's being used, for example, in the Tampa Bay area, is an 8 to 10-foot bait net. That means that if you got a 10-foot net that's stretched straight up and down, you're going to have approximately 20 feet that it can open up. Now, in a perfect world, a perfect pancake, that could happen. But realistically, and I'm talking from experience, if you're throwing a 10-foot net, you're going to get somewhere around, it depends how good you are, 16 to 18 feet, unless you just happen. Now, if you got some heights, if you're throwing it from a boat, you might get 18 feet out of it, maybe 19. If you're throwing it from a bridge and you spin it, you can almost get a solid 20 feet out of it. But a net is a net, and you got different size meshes. Now, we're talking about catching bait in this particular instance. So you got to understand, and here's something the way it works. You got mesh sizes. A 1/4 inch square, which is what you would use for glass minnows, small white bait, small sardines, whatever. A 1/4 inch square is equal to a 1/2 inch stretch. That means if you stretch the mesh, it'll be a 1/2 inch stretch from knot to knot, but when you open it up, it becomes a 1/4 inch. So that means if you're looking at a 3/8, you're looking at about almost, it's a 1/2 inch net square, stretch from knot to knot. So a 3/8 square in here will become, a 5/8 stretch. And that's what you got to look at. Now, where do you use different size nets? For example, early in the season, you got young hatchlings. You want to use a 1/4 inch mesh, unless you're trying to throw it in real deep water. But if you're fishing the flats for bait, the most common size used in the beginning of the season and midway through the season when the second hatch comes out, it's going to be a 1/4 inch mesh. Now, as the bait gets bigger, you can move to a 3/8 square, which is the ideal size. It'll sink a little faster. If you're throwing around range markers where you're in 10 to 15, 20 feet of water, you can get away with a 3/8. With the heavier net, 1.5, 1.6 pounds per foot. Normally, most bait nets right now on the market are going to be like a 1.3 pound per foot. And that'll work good. A 1/4 inch mesh, you'll be able to throw it up to 8, 10 feet of water and still catch bait with it. Once you get beyond that point, you really should go to a 3/8 square mesh, and that'll help you. Now, you're trying to get big thread fins, blue runners, that's totally different. At that point, you're going to be using a bigger mesh, like a 1 inch. That'll give you fast sinking, and you're going to have like a 1.6 pound. Some captains even use a 2.0, which is 2 pounds per foot. That means you're throwing a 12-foot net. You're throwing 24 pounds of lead to get that net to open up. Wow. The other thing too is you should have always at least 30 feet of line coming out of the top of your net going to your hands. And the reason for that is, and you want a floating line on it, floating rope, if that's what you want to call it. The reason is if it comes off your hand, if you're somewhere in shallow water, that will float, give you a chance to recover your net. If you got regular twisted rope or braided line on it, it'll sink to the bottom. You're not going to get your net back. So that's important. One of the things you always want, at least 30 feet of rope on the net, because again, you might be only throwing in 4 or 5 feet of water. If you're throwing from a boat, you're throwing right there. 10 feet will probably be plenty, maybe 15. But you get in a little deeper water, 10 feet of water, for example, you're throwing 10 feet from the boat. Now you need about 20 feet or better. That net's got to open up. The other thing is you want a floating type line. In case it slips out of your hand, at least that rope will float give you a chance to recover your net. If you have a regular docking line or a regular anchor rope on it, what'll happen is you'll sink with the net. You'll never recover the net. The other thing too is they always have a loop at the end. And if you're in shallow water, I do this all the time. If you're in shallow water, it's okay to do it this way where you can see it. You're on the grass flats, you're in 4 feet of water, 5 feet of water. You can see what's around you. It's okay to do it this way. But anytime you're throwing this net in water that you can't see the bottom, deeper water, you want to always hold it like this, because you can land on top of a dolphin. When you're throwing it around bridges, you can land on top of a shark, a little Goliath grouper. You never know what's down there. And if you don't have it this way where you can release it and let it go, it's going to take you in the water. So that's just a little safety thing about the net itself. Now, the other thing too is we talked about lead lines, and there's different types of, over the years, you've had the traditional lead all the way across the bottom on your bait nets and cast nets. One of the things that I didn't like about it is it does hurt the ecology. The regular leads being dragged over the grass flats as you catch bait does 2 things: tears up the grass, and number 2 is it kind of hurts the bait sometimes. It kind of hurts them, and also you lose a lot of bait. So if you look at the traditional has always been where your lid is just snapped on around the bottom of the net. As you can see how the lids are, these are just pushed in, they're squeezed in place. And that's okay. That's the way we've been doing it for all these years. The problem with this, it does tear up the bottom. And the way they're made, because you have a gap in between, you'll lose a lot of bait sometimes, and it hurts the bait. Over the years, people have come up with new ideas, and this is where I like this one. It's black pearl. Black pearl, what they've done is the lid is all inside the line on the bottom. So there's nothing that can tear up the bottom. It's going to go real smooth over the grass so it doesn't tear up the grass. Number 2 is because there's no open gaps, as you can see, no open gaps at all. Bait doesn't get out. Plus, it doesn't hurt your bait. So on the long run, I prefer to use something like the new Black Pearl what they call it, Invisible lead line. And this, let me tell you, it's made a big improvement. I think it'll help us in the ecology in Tampa Bay and anywhere else that you're catching bait. It's perfect. And this is a 1.3 pounds per foot. So it's heavy enough that it'll get you down up to about, 10, 12 feet of water to catch your bait. I can't say enough about it, how good it is. So there's the advantages of using that type, and Black Pearl's the only one that has that on the market. So if you're looking for something to take care of the ecology, catch more bait, have your bait stay a little healthier, I would recommend Black Pearl. And that's all I'm going to say about them. But again, the factors that you're looking at, how deep are you going to be trying to catch your bait? That's going to determine the size of your mesh. If you're always going to catch bait the majority of the time inside of 6, 7, 8 feet of water, I would have just a 1/4 inch mesh, because that catches everything. If you got the money, you can afford it, I would have a 1/4 and a 3/8, because as the season progresses, for example, in this area, the first hatchings the first baits will really start to show up in the flats around late March, middle of March, early April, depends on the water temperature. You need to have a 1/4 inch or you're gonna get gilt. And believe me, the worst thing you can happen is you bring up that net and you got 300 little eyes looking at you stuck on that net, because they're just almost big enough to get out to a 3/8 mesh, but they're not. So I always, beginning of the season, I use a 1/4 inch. 99% of the time, I use a 1/4 inch mesh. Now, sometimes later on in the season, the bait's pretty big. If I'm going into deeper water, I'll take my 3/8 net. But that's up to you. But if you're only going to own one net, I suggest a 1/4 inch net first. And then as your budget allows it, go to a 3/8 size mesh. Now what we're going to do is, we told you, all about the nets. Where do you go catch your bait? One of the things you want to know about catching bait is they're always going to be on the flats, but they always want to be close to some kind of a drop off. You're always going to catch the bait somewhere in this area where as the sun starts to rise, you notice by 9 o'clock, all that bait can get down here. They feel a little more protected. They get in the bottom of that deeper water and they feel better. Now you can still catch them down there, but most of the bait is always caught at daybreak, because we want to catch the bait first thing in the morning, so we have it by 8 o'clock to do our charters, or you want bait as soon as you can get it. Start fishing as soon as you can. So what I would suggest is look at the area that you're going to be catching bait, and always remember, try to pick the flats that are close to some little drop off. Even if you're catching bait in 3 feet of water and there's a little area that's 5 foot deep close to it, a little channel, the better bait's always going to be closer to that channel. So that's one way to find your bait. The other thing is look for diving birds. It's an indication there's plenty of baits, but it also indication that there could be a bunch of glass minnows too, and you want to stay away from that. Now that we covered that part, we're going to cover about the chum and how to make your chum so you can really be effective. Just going into an area and throwing your net, or what we call rodeo, trying to do a rodeo job on the net. I've seen people do this. They have a guy standing in the front, one guy in the back, he's running the boat, and the guy in the front is saying, turn left, there's a bunch of bait there. You can spend all day, and that bait just keeps moving away from you. The best way is you anchor on your spot, is you get to the spot that you figured out there's going to be some bait, or you saw some bait on the flats. Anchor up, and you got to start laying a chum line. Biggest mistake I see, everybody starts to chum, they see a little bit of bait show up and they throw the net. Well, every time you throw the net, you spook those fish. That bait takes a little while longer to come back. For me, is you need to chum sometimes 10, 15 minutes until you got all that bait right there. It's really starting to pile up. Now it gives you a chance to throw the net 2 or 3 times. And if you do it right, that first throw could give you 150, 200 baits, sometimes even more. That could be the whole trip for you. If you throw it too soon and you spook them, then you've got to start all over again. So don't be in a hurry to throw the net. I know it's tough because you see bait starting to flash through your chum and you get all excited. Let them get a little thicker. When you feel that you got a pretty good bunch, then throw the net. And as soon as you throw the net, you start bringing it in, either you or have somebody else throw some more chum, because the whole idea is you want to keep them in the area. You'd already spooked them when that net hit the water. A bunch of them took off. But if you throw some more chum, you get them going again. Now, I'm going to show you how and what type of chum to use. All right, we already talked about the nets and what kind of net you need. And like I said, we're not going to teach you how to throw the net. There's a lot of videos out there. But it's not just throwing the net. After you throw the net, you got to have a reason for throwing the net. And of course, it's to catch the bait. Now, here's the way we chum, and what I found over the years that really works really, really great. Number one is the common one that all the captains use is Purina Tropical Fish Food. And they do make 2 of them. They make one that's like a 33, 34% oil base, and one that's about 45, 50%. You want that stronger oil-based Purina Tropical Fish Food. It's a couple of dollars more a bag. It comes in like a 50-pound bag, and that's what you want. The other thing too is, as long as you once you open the bag, you put it in a container that you can lock up, a 5-gallon container. I went over to Dollar Tree and I bought like 15 1-gallon containers, which is perfect. I fill each one up after I make my chum, and then I always take 2 of those in the boat every time I go out. So I know that when I get low on one, next time when I get home that night, I put a new gallon container in. I always want 2 full containers in the boat, almost full, to make sure I don't run out. Now the secret is not just everybody says, okay, I bought it, I'm out there, it works pretty good. How do you make it better? And over the years, I've learned a couple little tricks to make it better. This is a sample of mine, and if you can look, there's something different about this chum. It's Purina chum right there, but you can see a little bit of glitter in it. There's a little bit of red and a little bit of silver glitter. What I mix in with it, believe it or not, I take the time to do it. I use this color, little bigger red glitter, and then I use a laser silver, which is real fine, real shiny, almost powder-like, talcum powder-like glitter. And I just put a little bit in each gallon, and I shake it up, and it gives me that. And the reason for the glitter, it does 2 things. If you ever notice that when you're catching bait, you look in your bait well, and you see like little glitters, these little scales. For some reason, it attracts those greenback sardines and the thread fins. Don't ask me why, but it does. So if it's going to help me catch more bait, I do that. And then the real secret, and this goes back so many years, this by itself will give you a 50% advantage over the guy next to you that's not using it, okay? And what is it? Is anise oil. not extract, the oil. At one time, you used to be able to buy it in the pharmaceutical departments and most of the grocery stores. They've gotten out of it. It's an old Spanish remedy. You can get it on Amazon now. That's where I get mine. All you need is, it comes with an eyedropper. I use like an empty coffee can, plastic coffee can from the coffee that you make every day. I fill that up about 2/3 of the way with the chum, and then I add 5 drops of anise oil in it. Then you add your water and you mix it. And when I mix my chum, everybody has a different technique. Some guys like to use it dry, some like to use it in a little ball. I make it till it's almost a little thicker than a cream of wheat. When you're mixing cream of wheat for breakfast or whatever, something like that, you want it to be a little thick, but not too thick. And the whole idea is that I want to be able to throw it in the water, and I want that thing to break up right away. And it does several things. Number one, the glitter puts that little shine in the water that attracts the bait. And the anise oil, let me tell you, you know the guy that's using anise oil, because you look behind his boat and you can see a slick track behind my boat that might run 3 blocks long. Well, that slick line is scent that's being put into the water for this bait fish. Where the guy next to me might be throwing regular chum, you'll see a little bit of the slick line once in a while. My boat, you can see it, and the bait comes to the boat a lot quicker and hangs around a lot longer. So if I've taught you anything, is when you use your tropical fish food, take the time. And where do you buy this? You can buy it at any, like Michael's, Hobby Lobby. You can go on the internet, buy the bigger bottles. It works really great. And then buy you the bigger bottle of anise oil. And it comes with an eyedropper. This little bottle, for the average guy, if you go out once a week, this will last you all summer long. And it's worthwhile doing it, believe me. I wish I could stress how important, how many times I pulled into an area where the guys are catching a few bait. I start chumming with my system, and before you know it, guess what? I've got a lot more bait behind the boat. Sometimes I've pulled in, somebody's been there already 15 minutes. I'll leave with my bait well full of bait, and they're still there trying to catch bait. So I hope you learned a few things today, and thank you for watching. And we try to put one of these out about every 2 weeks if we can. And thank you very much.